Great experiences build great leaders. Great leaders build great teams. This is Building Great Sales Teams.
All right, guys, welcome back to Building Great Sales Teams. We've got an explosive one for you guys today. I've got Steve Schabacker here at the podcast. He's the CMO at Sheepdog Firearms, CEO of Valhalla Research, and Huata at the Tactical Entrepreneur Podcast. My friend Steve here has scaled multiple businesses from 0 to 8 figures in sales. And he just celebrated back in January his 20-year wedding anniversary. So congrats on that, brother.
Thank you very much, man. It was actually 25th, 25.
Oh, okay. I was looking it up on Facebook, and I guess Facebook's wrong.
Yeah,
awesome,
Facebook's
man.
Probably the fifth anniversary of the 20th anniversary, or you know how they do it.
I got you, brother. No, that's awesome, man. So the first and obvious question I feel like is, what is I can't even say it. Huata? What is that?
I don't know where that came from, bro. I have no idea. That must have been Siri when I was filling out your form or something, because it sure wasn't me. If you figure it out, tell me so I know. It sounded kind of cool. I'm like, where's he going with this?
It did, and then I looked it up, and it was like a native or a Old English word for thief. I was like, what does he mean by that? Oh, that's hilarious. I guess, yeah, Siri got it wrong on that one for sure. All right, brother. Well, one of the things I love about you is your tagline on social media, fact and non-verba. Can you kind of walk us through what that means and why you chose that to live by?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started using that. Fact and non-verba in a nutshell means, actions, not words. In this day and age, we hear so many people about talk this game, do this, and so many of them haven't even done it. They haven't walked it out, but they have no problems talk about it. So I love to say to people, well, you know what? Don't tell me about it. Show me about it. Show me what you're about. I'm going to learn way more from watching you than I will the words coming out of your mouth, sadly,
No, I couldn't agree more. And being in the space that you and I are in, where it's an intentional part of our business to build our social media, and then we're in all these masterminds, and there's different levels to them and everything. So we see a lot of that, right? And there will be a trend, whether it be core values or whether it be VAs or whatever the case is. And then all of a sudden it becomes everybody's answer for everything. And a lot of people haven't even executed on these things, and so it's hard for me to see that out of people sometime. And it's like, well, tell me the story behind why you're convicted on that. You know what I mean? Because usually that comes with the work that you did.
Yeah, it is. For me, it's just like, I think it just actually stemmed from just a frustration in general of fake people. These days with this social media influencer thing and everybody, being out there, just one day I'm like, you know what? I'm just so sick of just even hearing about this. I just love the people that just post about things that are going on, a lot like your stuff, man, kind of walking through your journey with you. So much respect for that compared to, woo, I did this, woo, I did that. Well, did you? Or is that just a picture? Realistically, it's like, well, did you? Or did somebody do it for you? Or you just, so like for me, I think I started using it just more as like a frustration, even just to remind myself to keep myself in check of saying, hey, you know what? If you're talking about it, you better have already walked it, and not vice versa. I know we're in the generation of, you hear so many people say the old fake it till you make it stuff. Well, I don't know. I'm kind of adverse to that. I'm more like, just keep quiet until you figure it out. Then when you figure it out, please share it with everybody. But don't act like you got it all together when you don't, in any aspect of your life. Whether it be people talking about their relationships. So that one, nobody has it all together. But at least, but I mean, like,
I haven't seen one yet.
I've seen some people that I've known actually, be on Facebook talking about how great their wife are, and then as they're coming out of a hotel room with some other chick, like, really, just stuff like that in general. You see it in business, you see it in personal, And for me, just adopting the fact of nonverbal was just more of just a frustration and kind of like a battle cry for everybody to say, hey, you know what, let's stop talking about it. Let's start doing it. Let's show people some action.
I love that. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And one of the things I like that you said is, you kind of, it's also a reminder for yourself, right? And so I was at Easter past weekend, and we were at my wife's family's little ranch that they have, and they all come together every Easter to the ranch. And one of the cousins asked me, like, hey, how come you're always posting about integrity? And what I told him is like, that's more for me than it is for you or for anybody looking at that, because it's constant. If I'm posting about that, then I have to be accountable to that constantly. And it's just me holding myself accountable. A lot of times when I post on social media, it's me talking to myself.
Yeah, I feel you there. I do the same thing. It just sometimes we need the reminder as much as anybody else. And it's funny how you'll get kind of two different sections of people. One section will be like, "Yeah, I needed to hear that. Thank you."
Yeah.
Well, sorry, it wasn't really for you. But if you got value from it, that's great too. But then on the other hand, you'll get people that'll be just so how can you even talk about that? It's that's not even true. That's not even like
Yeah.
like you just don't know. It's like, okay, well, you're triggered much, I guess. Something poking at you a little bit about something I said, and that's usually
Yeah.
the case, isn't it? You see sometimes when people get the most bent out of shape, they're usually fighting with that particular thing. When you
Yeah.
make a post about lifting your sales team up and gathering them together, people that are getting the most mad about it are probably ones that haven't taken the time to do that, and they know that, so that's why they're reacting to it.
Yeah, and you can take any statement or situation or whatever the case is, and make a case for one way or the other. That's why I love the documentation strategy with social media. You're just documenting your journey, what's happening with you in that particular moment, and there is a million variables going on. You know what I mean? So I don't think anybody ever has the end all be all answer, but it's more like, hey, this is what I experienced. This is the maybe the few variables I have going on. And if you can learn from it, great. If not, then, keep scrolling like everybody else. You know what I mean? All
Oh
right,
yeah,
brothers.
without a doubt.
So when I first met you, I was like, okay, Steve's the gun guy. You know what I mean? He's the First Amendment guy. He's the gun shop owner. You know what I mean? And then as I started talking to you and getting to know you a little more, and then we had a few marketing conversations, I was like, no, Steve's the marketing guy. You know what I'm saying? Like, this dude is a bit of a marketing guru, I guess you could say. So when it comes to marketing, where did those skills come from?
That's just what I've always loved. It's been self-taught forever. At times I did a great job at it. At times I did a lousy job at it and learned some lessons. But it's just been my passion forever. It's really interesting because now I really have had the view for many years that it doesn't matter what we're selling. We're all in the business of marketing. We're all in the business of getting our wares or our services communicated across in a desirable way so that people want to do business with us. When you add in the sales aspect of it, it really creates the full circle and just talks about that whole relationship with the customer. So I really love the beginning of it myself, and just getting those customers interested and getting them to know our products and having those interactions and seeing things snowball and grow. And then I do like the sales side of it too. That's one of the parts that I loved about when we first started the first gun shop, was just going into the store and having those conversations and figuring that out. See, the one thing that drew us to a lot of the industries that I've started companies in is they're all industries that are adverse to change. I love
Mhm.
disrupting things and creating a ruckus, and um, the gun industry was one that really needed it. You go into most gun shops and they're all the same. You got a lot of glass cases and two grumpy guys behind the counter. And if you don't, if it's true, if you don't
Yeah.
speak their language,
No.
you have about 5 minutes before they're gonna say something rude to you or just tell you to get out. And there's so many new people coming into into love for the Second Amendment. Whether it's like in Chicagoland, it's really by need of be able to defend yourself. In some other areas, it's hunting or sporting or a combination of all those things, or just being prepared for in the event that we end up falling back to the days of George Washington and having tyrannical government. Whatever the case is, people
Mhm.
are all brought together by it, and we're finding less and less. It doesn't matter anymore political affiliations, it seems like the Second Amendment is something that people are definitely rallying behind. So I just loved being able to start those conversations with people and be different and try to figure out what we had to do as a gun shop to do all the things that none of the other ones were doing. Like the gun industry, it's crazy, especially at the shop level,
Hmm.
is so technology adverse. I mean, you can literally go in some gun shops today, and there's not hardly a computer in the place. Maybe they have one for running backgrounds, but they still do the forms all on paper. They
Yeah.
don't have anything for special ordering. They're calling people up to see, hey, you got this in stock? Where they're not embracing any of the tech. And
Yeah.
customers are seeing this, and even like the one thing we saw really widespread was the one thing that I think that helped us grow the most was realizing that we have to talk to these customers how they want to talk to us. You'll
Hmm.
have some old school that wants to pick up the phone and call you. Fine, you got to answer the phone. Have some
Right.
people want to email you, but more and more, we found that when we embraced talking to people through Messenger and through text, which is how they wanted to communicate. One, they were shocked that we did it, and
Hmm.
and two, that just made them customers for life. Like, you understand us, you get us, and really
Yeah.
all it was is just kind of common sense of, okay, well, you want to talk to me through Messenger, and then I
Hmm.
answered you, and then you spent like the next 15 minutes thanking me and couldn't believe that I actually answered. Well, after the first few people did that, then I caught on. I'm like, oh, okay, this is just something no one else is doing. So listening to the customer and really just letting them pick what they want, and then finding the gap in between, what's going on with these other companies in the industry and how can I do things better and different. So that's really what draws me to the whole marketing side of it, is just, to do that is one thing, but to communicate that you're doing that and to draw new people in is entirely another. So I love bringing the two sides together.
I think that rolls right into my next question, which is, what are a lot of business owners doing wrong right now when it comes to their marketing? And it sounds like when you talk about the beginning of the customer journey on the front end, it's not properly qualifying that customer or giving them those options, like you just said, of different forms of communication, whether it be email, phone, social media, text, whatever the case is. And when you establish that early on, I think that's huge because I do a training on buying the way or selling the way customers want to buy. And it's one of my favorite trainings to do, and people love it. And it's because in the initial part of the conversation, you are immediately customizing your intro and your qualify to that customer. You know what I'm saying? Based on their tonality, their mannerisms, their stature, um, uh, and their handshake. So if it's in person or if it's over Zoom or if it's over the phone, it doesn't really matter. You can identify a few key things that determine how you should talk to that person. You know what I'm saying? And so I think communication is so important. And then by starting it the right way on the front end of the customer journey, that makes the sales piece so much easier because they're already sold by you. You know what I mean? They're sold about you, I should say, about your company. Like, oh, this is a company I want to work with. And if it's $10 more, if it's $20 more, it doesn't really matter because I like this experience that I'm having. And I think that's massive on the front end. What are some other things that you see businesses doing right now in terms of lead gen that they're either missing the boat or they need to be doing more of?
Well, I think the one thing that people are really missing the boat on is just the first of all, just not being different. We see so many new entrepreneurs just saying, "Well, all right, well, there's this place and this place that does exactly what I want to do. I'm going to open up a store and do the exact same thing." Well, at that point, you're just a commodity. Then the only thing you have left to compete on is price, and then it's just going to be a race to the bottom and see who wants to go out of business first. I think the first thing that people really need to do in that aspect is take a look at the marketplace in general and look at the unserved needs of the customer. Listen to the customer. Okay, what do they need? Is it okay? You want to get into the restaurant business? Is it somebody not doing delivery in your area? Is there a particular type of food that's not well represented? Is what's not great? Is the in service for dining in not great? Or find a niche, find something and identify that before you spend your first dollar, and 9 times out of 10 you're going to be more successful. And it's so many of those things that people just don't think through. And that extends over definitely to the marketing thing, the marketing side of it, really not coming up with a comprehensive plan. I think if I could give one piece of advice to any entrepreneur out there saying, hey, what can I do better marketing wise? I would
Mm-hmm.
tell you, make up a plan and work it. Plan out your month. How many times are you going to be able to post to social media? Can you come up with your stuff ahead of time and schedule it out? That's fine too. Make sure you allow some time to answer and engage with those customers on those posts too. But the key is to set some time aside and plan for it, and then actually execute that plan. But then the next step of it is to go back and look at the data. Okay, what kind of posts did my customers that I want resonate with? What kind did they not? Is it a mix? Do they need a little bit of both? Like a lot of times, people will either go too far off one side or too far off the other. Like, for example, a lot of the social media accounts for the business side, I try to do it really balanced. So I'll throw some memes out there and some funny stuff to get people engaged. I'll
Yeah.
throw some questions out there to try to get really just to get engagement, to get people let's real opinionated questions. Like I'll post something like, hey, you know, Glock is better than any 1911 ever made. And then I just sit back and grab some popcorn and watch that post just take off, because then the Glock fans argue and the 1911 fans argue, and then just kind of goes back and forth. So any of those sorts of things, but then also then coming in, one out of every five, one out of every six posts, and posting a little something about one of our services or a new class
Mhm.
or some new gun that came out or something, and really try to mix it up in the way that they're not getting the same thing, but at the same time they know what to expect. They know, hey, there's going to be some funny stuff, there's going to be some stuff we can argue about, and then there's going to be some posts that are educational in content or new products, or hey, sales ad, we throw that up once a week, and that gets a lot of great reach. But they know what to expect, because we made a plan and we worked it, and we just weren't flying by the seat of our pants.
No, I love it. I mean, it's so true, and we work with some of the greats that do that. Like Drew B. Wilson and his memes. Like if you're not following Drew, go follow him, because you'll get a nice cadence there. It's like business, like you just said, like every six posts or so, it's a little business. But then the second one is the family. The third one is a crazy meme, and the fourth one is about his fitness journey. So you get documentation, you get entertainment, you know what I mean? You get a little bit of business advice. And so it always rotates so well. And it's by design, right? I know this dude spends like 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday planning out his whole week, you know what I mean? And whenever you're
Yep,
doing things,
absolutely.
like you said, by design, they're going to be a lot more effective when it comes to that. So what is your forecast? We're going to pivot here a little bit, because this is just my curiosity now. What's your kind of forecast for the state of gun ownership in the U.S.? I get the NRA mailers and stuff like that. Like gun ownership has been being attacked for the past 10 years, according to the NRA, and the sky is falling. And if I don't join, or if I don't re-up, or whatever the case is, we're not going to beat them. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think it's quite that bad, but can you fill us in on that a little bit?
Yeah, as dramatic as that sounds,
Hmm.
realistically, the last 10 years ago, they were kind of eroding away on our rights. I don't
Hmm.
believe in the doom and gloom thing. I believe it's all cyclic. It's like anything else, like politics, or like even like a lot of stuff in business. What we're seeing now is, so this if you have you did you hear about the Supreme Court decision to do with concealed carry in New York? Or the other term you might hear, it's called the Bruin case or the Bruin decision. Well, that went all the way to the Supreme Court, and basically, in a nutshell, New York had this law against concealed carry that said, here we have concealed carry because they say they'd have to, but we are a may issue state, meaning that if you qualify, you can plead your case for it, and if we think you deserve it, we may issue it. Well, long story short, that ended up into New York only issuing somewhere around 600 or 700 concealed carry permits out of millions of applications. So it sounds kind of wrong, right? So it ended up going all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court overturned that and said, no, that you can't do that. You have to, if people should have the right, and the right to bear arms extends out of their home into their public to defend themselves, which was key. But then it went on to explain some more key things, and one of which was about how they could determine whether or not something could be banned. Like, for example, we'll take what they call the modern semi-automatic rifle, or I would call it a modern sporting rifle, but they call it assault rifles because it sounds scarier.
Right.
So take assault rifle, for example. They said, well, if you're going to ban something, it has to meet two tests. Not just one, it has to meet both of these, or it's unconstitutional to ban it. Well, one is that it has to be exceptionally dangerous. It has to be like cutting edge, more dangerous, super dangerous than anything else out there. Yeah, some modern sporting rifles, they're made to kill things, and they're made to hunt with and do all kinds of other things, and defend ourselves against tyranny. Well, okay, we could possibly lose that argument. Well, the second one is they have to be uncommon. So there's millions and millions and millions and millions of semi-automatic modern sporting rifles out there in the United States. So they are far from uncommon. So therefore, that particular ban, fails the test. Same thing could be said about, regular capacity magazines that hold 20 or 30 rounds, and lots of other things. Well, because most of the laws on the books, like California's bans and a lot of those other bans, were all before Bruin. That wasn't factored in. So I think what we're going to see over the next couple of years is a lot of these bans that have been around for a little while being challenged and being overturned. Illinois really started out kind of the whole thing of it with, they enacted the worst semi-automatic rifle ban in the country, way worse than California's. It was probably all of about 2 or 3 models are all that I could find of semi-automatic rifles that were legal because of how they wrote the law. And the problem with that is that there's so many millions of those guns out there, and a lot of the guns are like specifically only used for sporting purposes. So they really extended, but really it's just, to me, my opinion on that's J.B. Pritzker trying to make a name for himself before he tries to make a presidential run. But we'll see what happens with that. Hey, he'll bring the great the great communist agenda from that he did for Illinois. He'll do it for the country. That'll be what he runs on. But anyway, I think we're going to see some tough times for the next year or two when it comes to gun rights and stuff being eroded. But once these cases start to progress and some of them get to the Supreme Court, there's going to be a lot of stuff overturned, and then it's going to the pendulum is going to flow back the other direction. The other thing we're obviously seeing too is, if you've heard about the ATF trying to ban pistol braces and trying to ban some triggers and whatnot just by their interpretation of the law, I think we're going to see the Supreme Court shut the ATF down on a very severe note too, based on some comments some of the justices have made. So I think the next year or so is going to be tough for the gun industry in general and people. But I think after that, it's going to open up, and I think the momentum it's going to gain by people realizing that, hey, they're trying to take these things away from us. They actually are. So you've had the NRA and some other groups crying wolf for a really long time when things weren't as bad as they are now. So people are getting kind of immune to it, but now I think people are starting to wake up and realize that, hey, you know what? Post-COVID, they're realizing, hey, especially like here in Chicago, crime's at an all-time high. It's mayhem on the streets a lot of times. There's carjackings in the middle of the day, not even if you don't go into the bad neighborhoods. People are getting robbed at gunpoint, getting gas. It's become kind of the only thing we don't have here yet is a purge siren. That's the only thing that's missing. So it's getting rough, and people of all types are realizing, hey, I need to be able to defend myself. I am responsible for my family, and the police are great, but they're not going to be here for 5, 7, 10, 12 minutes, sometimes longer. A lot can happen in 5 minutes, especially when there's firearms involved. When the bad guy's got a gun, if you don't have one, you don't have any hope, but then just to give him your stuff and hope he doesn't shoot you. Because the problem we're seeing now too is it used to be just robbery, and they would just take your stuff and they'd go. Now they're getting cocky and shooting at people as they walk away or as they take your car and shoot at you or whatever. So it's kind of
Right.
like, remember before 9/11 when you'd hear about hijackings and it was really no big deal. You'd
Yeah.
hear, okay, well, hey, they took over a plane, it landed. All right, well, they'll sit on the tarmac for a couple of hours and they'll either negotiate or send in Delta Force and go take the plane back over, and everybody will be fine. And so as a passenger, you're never really much worried about it. I mean, you worried about it, but not like now. Now, though, if you see any sense of any hijacking going on, what's every passenger or any
Yeah.
able-bodied man going to do on that plane is, we're if you're going to take us all down with you, we're not going to just let you take this plane
Yeah.
anymore. So I just see that whole mentality changing when it comes to just protecting one's family, both protecting and then also for medical care too. We see a lot of people, we do a lot of classes on stop the bleed and those sorts of things to teach people
Hmm.
just a little bit of trauma medical care in case something would happen to a family member, enough to get them to the hospital yourself if you have to, sort of a thing. So I'm seeing personal responsibility taken from people, which has been a great thing, but there's been a whole lot of changes since COVID, just real interesting times.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I appreciate the detailed explanation of that too. I mean, it's good to hear that there is an end in sight, though, even though it's going to get little rough for the next couple of years. But like you said, that pendulum is swinging the other way, which is massive. I think there's a lot of correlation between entrepreneurship and gun rights. It's just one of those things. It's like if I have a choice between my livelihood or my safety, uh, being subject to myself or subject to the government, I think I'm going to take myself every single time. You know what I'm saying? But like you said, we have to do that responsibly. We have to educate ourselves. And so I think you couldn't be more right in the fact that, like, we all do it in our own way. For me, it's raising chickens in my backyard, and that's just the beginning, right? We want to have a full on hobby farm someday that we can self sustain, with solar and backup generators and everything else. And so we all have our own versions of that, but gun ownership is definitely part of that formula. So I'm glad to hear that, that it will swing the other way eventually. And some of those, and then that's where it really matters, right? It's the Supreme Court, and that's where it's happening
Yeah.
right now. So
Yeah, that's for sure. The one thing people have to realize though, like whether you're talking gun ownership or, freedom of speech or anything, we're really just a generation away from things going away. If we don't
uh,
exercise these rights, if we don't exercise the rights we have of all types, and they're going to go away. They're going to be taken from us or forgotten or a combination of both. So
mhm,
that's why I always tell folks it's so important. Hey, even if you don't need something, whether it's guns or anything else, even if you don't need it, it's your right. Exercise it once in a while. Make
mhm,
sure that the next generation knows that this is a right, so things can't be twisted. I mean, you get like guns, for example. You'll get people saying, "Whoa, well, why do you need these guns to hunt?" Do you really think the Constitution was written about hunting? Do you seriously think about it? Let's take a step
yeah,
back in time. What these guys were dealing with when they wrote this Constitution? No, they were trying to write things in there to protect us from tyranny.
mhm,
Plain and simple. It's not a discussion people want to have. Or even like the Joe Biden's famous quote of, if you guys think that you're going to stand up against the government, you're going to need F-15s and nukes if you're going to stand up against us. Like you're not going to be able to do it with any kind of handgun or rifle. Well, like
yeah,
that was a one heck of a wake up call just with that statement. Just that someone in the government would even think that way. But
yeah,
uh, you know, we have to exercise those rights, or we're going to lose them.
100%. Man, that boils my blood. I hadn't heard that yet. That's crazy.
Oh
Man, that's
yeah, yeah.
crazy.
Google that one. It's great. They got him on video. He's like, like you can't believe that, because somebody
Mhm,
basically said to the statement to him, but hey, you know what? It's these guns are for tyranny. These guns are for
yeah.
keeping the government honest. These guns are for whatever. Oh, you think they're going to do that? No, you need nukes and jet aircraft.
Hmm. Well, and how massive was that? And how much did it tell you that our founding fathers were like, "Hey, we could be the tyranny someday, so let's
Yeah,
protect, our future citizens from us. If we get too in our heads and too about ourselves, you know what I'm saying? And that's the thing when you're starting something from something that's broken, you do have to take that step back and say, "Hey, how could I fuck this up too?" You know what I'm saying? and put in things to prevent that in the future. So no, I definitely appreciate that. Okay, so last couple of questions, and I ask this to all my podcast guests, and it is, what does legacy mean to you, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
So for me, that's a great question. For me, it's funny. The older I get, the more I think about that. You could ask me 20 years ago, and I would have tell you, no, I really didn't think about it. It really didn't come to
Mm-hmm.
mind. It wasn't even. It was just living day to day. But now for me, legacy means is just what will be said of me when I'm gone. What will I leave behind? What did I change for the better?
Mm-hmm.
Both within my family and outside my family. Of course, part of it is man, if I knew the things I knew now at 49 when I was in my 20s, I want to try to download as much of this information as I can with my to my kids,
Mm-hmm.
nephews, nieces, everybody I can. But for me, legacy is just leaving something behind that's going to outlast me. And an interesting thing is, as entrepreneurs, we have a very unique opportunity. We
Mm-hmm.
have an opportunity to build something and leave something that will be around still, or could potentially be making a difference in the world long after we're dust again. So I think it's a huge responsibility, like say, especially those of us in entrepreneurs, to try to make the best of that opportunity, make the best of that legacy. For me personally, everybody is different, but for me, it's not necessarily accumulating things or stacking cash. It's trying to make a positive difference in my community, in the people around me, but then and also my family, just to leave something better than I found it.
Absolutely, brother. And I know you're doing that through your business and through your podcast, and through being a guest on this podcast, whether it's talking about the things that business owners need to get right in their marketing, or, gun ownership in general. We appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it a lot. I knew it was gonna be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Steve. Let's get building.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Building Great Sales Teams podcast. We really do appreciate it. As you know, we believe that great leaders build great teams. How do you become a great leader? You learn from the greats. Join us at the $1 Million Mastermind put on by Ryan Stuman in Frisco, Texas, and learn everything that you need to learn to be that great leader. The link will be in the description below. As always, we ask that you like, share, and subscribe wherever you consume podcasts so you can stay up to date with the Building Great Sales Teams podcast. Let's get building.